Rabies is a deadly but preventable viral disease that affects mammals, including humans. The virus is transmitted through the bite of an infected animal. Once in the body, it affects a mammal's nervous system, ultimately spreading to the brain and causing death. Rabies got its name, either from rabhas, meaning to do violence in Sanskrit, or from rabere, which is Latin for to rage. Additionally, the ancient Greeks named it after Lyssa, the spirit of mad rage, which is also the name given to the genus that we classify the rabies virus under in modern times, Lyssa virus. Rabies is a disease that has been around for a long time, with the first record incident of it being in the Mosaic Esmona Code of Babylon in 2300 BC. Later, in the 1st century AD, a Roman scholar named Celsus correctly guessed that rabies is transferred through saliva, but incorrectly treated it by holding the person underwater. Over time, many other attempts at treating rabies appeared, including the mad stones, calcified hairballs found in the stomach of cows, goats, and deers, with the belief that it could draw out the madness from the bite wound. It wasn't until the 1880s that the first actual treatment for rabies was made, when Louis Pasteur, a French chemistry teacher, successfully immunized cattle against anthrax with a vaccine. Later on, he successfully treated a young boy named Joseph Meister for rabies, and eventually 20,000 more people with his rabies vaccine. In this section, we will discuss the pathophysiology of rabies, covering what the rabies virus is, how it affects a person, and how it remains undetected after it enters the human body. The rabies virus, or RABV, is part of the genus Lyssa virus and the family Rhabdoviridae. Lyssa virus is characterized by its bullet-shaped body and RNA genome. The genome of a Lyssa virus contains only 5 genes, each of which code for a different structural protein. Whilst RABV is the most common cause of rabies in humans, it isn't the only species of Lyssa virus that can cause rabies. Some examples being the Duven H virus and the Lagos bat Lyssa virus. RABV infects domestic animals like dogs and mammals like bats, raccoons, skunks, and foxes. Rabies infects a person through their nerve cells, or neurons. The virus enters the body through the bite of a mammal infected with rabies. The saliva containing the virus gets injected into a person's muscle cells. From there, the virus enters a neuron through its nicotinic acetylcholine receptor, which is responsible for transmitting chemical signals that allow cells to communicate. The virus then utilizes the internal scaffolding of a neuron, the microtubules, to travel to the brainstem. Once it reaches the brainstem, the virus spreads around the brain and clinical symptoms begin to show. Lastly, the virus travels downward to the salivary glands, where it stays for transmission to another host. Rabies is able to go undetected by the body's immune system for a long time, only triggering once the virus has already reached the brainstem. This is due to the virus stopping neurons from alerting the immune system of its presence. The virus also does not kill neurons, leaving its structure intact, and can kill off T cells, which are vital components of the body's immune response, by telling them to self-destruct.
In this part of the video, we are going to be discussing the symptoms and diagnosis of rabies. Some of the symptoms with initial signs often including fever, discomfort, and peculiar or unexplained sensation like tingling, prickling, or burning at the site of the wound. As the virus proceeds to infiltrate the central nervous system, it triggers a severe and often lethal inflammation of the brain and spinal cord. Rabies, in its human manifestation, manifests in 2 distinct forms. The first one would be known as furious rabies. This form is characterized by hyperactivity, highly excitable behavior, hallucination, a mark of lack of coordination, hydrophobia, and aerophobia. The onset of furious rabies is marked by a dramatic and rapid deterioration of the patient's condition, culminating in cardiorespiratory arrest and death within matters of days. And the second one would be paralytic rabies. It affects approximately 20% of all human cases and is often less conspicuous in its initial stage. Paralysis, which begins at the wound site and gradually spreads, is a hallmark of its form. As the disease progresses, patients may descend into a coma and ultimately succumb to the condition. Unfortunately, the paralytic variant of rabies is frequently misdiagnosed, further worsening the issue of underreporting in rabies cases. This diagnosis is distinct for animals and humans. In animals, the DFA test swiftly identifies rabies virus antigens in brain tissue, enabling prompt diagnosis and facilitating post-exposure treatment. This is not only to prevent unnecessary suffering and financial burdens, but it also helps to support the disease surveillances and control efforts. Now, to confirm rabies in animals, brain tissue from a specific region, ideally the brainstem and cerebellum, is required, and this necessitates putting the animal to death humanely. Detecting rabies in humans before death involving multiple tests on various samples like saliva, serum, spinal fluid, and also skin biopsies from the neck. Different methods including virus isolation and RT-PCR for saliva and antibody detection in the serum and spinal fluid are employed. The DFA test relies on the presence of rabies virus proteins in infected animal tissues, particularly the brain, using freshly labeled anti-rabies antibodies. These antibodies bind to the rabies antigen when incubated with the suspected brain tissue, and fluorescence under a special microscope indicates the virus's presence.
Currently, there is no effective treatment for a bite from an animal carrying rabies. Therefore, at the moment of being bitten by an animal, it is essential to immediately clean the wound with soap and water and seek further wound treatment at a nearby clinic or hospital. The primary reason why rabies is incurable is because it is a virus that can spread to the brain. The human brain has a protective barrier called the blood-brain barrier. The flow of ions, chemicals, and cells between the blood and the tissues of the brain is tightly regulated by this system. This exact regulation of the environment within the central nervous system protects neural tissues against toxins and infections while supporting normal neuronal function. Furthermore, it prevents the brain from absorbing most drugs, and because of these characteristics, once the rabies virus has infected the brain, it becomes untreatable because drugs cannot pass through. Consequently, clinics and hospitals will provide medications such as human rabies immunoglobulin to patients who have been bitten. The entire dosage of human rabies immunoglobulin will be injected into or around the wound, and the remaining amount will be given through the muscle at a location separate from where the vaccination is administered. Rabies is transmitted through animals, and the ones closest to humans are often their household pets. Therefore, ensuring that your pets are vaccinated is a critical and indispensable measure. In cases where it is not feasible to provide adequate care or regular vaccinations for your pets, the most primary approach is to have them spay or neuter, as it can decrease the likelihood of rabies infection. From the preceding perspective, it's clear that vaccinating pets alone is not sufficient. Humans can also protect themselves through vaccination, a measure known as pre-exposure prophylaxis (PEP). Individuals at a high risk of contracting rabies should consider undergoing PEP. This includes individuals who work closely with livestock or wildlife, such as veterinarians. Moreover, if you encounter an injured wild animal in the wild, it's important not to touch it and instead contact the relevant authorities for proper handling. In addition to protecting pets from rabies, routine vaccines guard against a host of other pet illnesses. Vaccinating pets can help protect the health and safety of the owners and their families, particularly small children living in the home. Children are more likely to get bitten, and if immediate action is not taken, postponing treatment may become significantly more difficult.
Thanks for the insights. Now let's move on to our Q&A session. First question: which of the following statements regarding rabies are true? A. Rabies is a bacterial infection. B. Rabies is an incurable disease. And C. Rabies are mostly seen in Antarctica. We will give you 3 seconds to think of the answer. The correct answer for this question would be B. Rabies is an incurable disease. This is because rabies affects a mammal's nervous system, ultimately spreading to the brain and causing death. Proceeding to the second question: what is the best way to prevent rabies? A. Kill all stray animals. B. Run away from any animals you encounter. And C. Vaccinating yourself and animals. The correct answer for this question is C. Vaccinating yourself and animals, as this method helps your body and the animal to produce antibodies against the virus. Let's put your understanding about rabies to the test with this last question. Would be: why is rabies a deadly virus? A. Because the virus can spread to the brain. B. Because the virus will attack the heart first and make it stop. And C. Because the virus interferes with the brain's ability to make decisions. In 3, 2, and 1, the answer is A. Because the virus can be spread to the brain. To remind you guys again that the virus does not kill the neurons, leaving its structure intact, and can only kill off T cells, which are a vital component of the body's immune response, by telling them to self-destruct. With this, we are wrapping up this video about rabies.
We hope the viewers gain more knowledge regarding rabies and could altogether help to prevent rabies from taking away any creature's life on this earth. Thank you for your time and attention.